Hello student. Today we are going to learn Geography class 7. Chapter 2, Inside Our Earth. First of all, we will discuss here points of previous lecture. Let's recall the previous lecture points. First, interior of the earth. An onion, you would see there are concentric rings. Similar to the structure of the onion, you have the earth's interior. So, as you can see, there are different layers which are visible in an onion when you have cross section. Similarly, inside an earth, there are three major layers. The first one major layer is crust. The crust is the outermost layer. Crust surface which includes mountains, plateaus, plain, itself known as a crust. Crust can classified as one that forms at the continents or landmarks. Main mineral constituent of the continental mass is silica and aluminium. Thus, it is called Cr. And other important constituents is the oceanic crust. The oceanic crust mainly consists of silica and magnesium. Thus, it is called Sima. The thickness of the crust varies from 5 to 70 km. The continental crust is thicker and the oceanic crust is thinner. The mean thickness of oceanic crust is 5 km, whereas that of the continental is around 30 km. The temperature of the crust increases with the depth because of geothermal energy. The next important point after the crust is mantle. The mantle is the mostly solid bulk of Earth's interior. The mantle lies between Earth's dense superheated core and its thin outer layer, the crust. The mantle is about 2,900 km thick. The other major type of rock found in the mantle elements include iron, aluminium, calcium, sodium and potassium. In the mantle, heat and pressure generally increase with depth. The transfer of heat and material in the mantle helps determine the landscape of Earth. Activity in the mantle drives contributing to volcanoes, seafloor spreading, earthquakes and mountain building. The upper portion of the mantle is called asthenosphere, extending up to 400 km. It is a main source of magma and has a density higher than the crust. And the lower mantle extends beyond the asthenosphere. It is solid state. The next point is core. Core classified into two types, means inner core and outer core. The innermost layer is the core. The radius of core is about 3,500 km. It is mainly made up of nickel and iron. Thus, it is called knife. Means Ni means nickel and Fe means ferrous, that is the iron. The central core has a very high temperature and pressure. The temperature of the outer core ranges from 4,400 degrees Celsius in the outer regions to 6,100 degrees Celsius near the inner core. Without the outer core, life on Earth would be very different. Convection of liquid metals in the outer core creates the Earth magnetic field, and this magnetic field extends outward from the Earth from several thousand kilometers. and create a protective bubbles around the earth that deflect the sun's solar wind. The inner core of the earth as dictated by seismology. So, we had learnt which point interior of the earth, crust, mantle, core in the previous lecture. Now, today we are going to learn the next point of that topic is rocks. Now, rocks are presented on the earth crust is in simple term. The earth crust is made up of various types of the rocks. Any natural mass of the minerals matter that makes up the earth's crust is called a rock. Rocks can be of different color, size and texture. Look at the picture here. Here given the different shape, size and texture. If I want to define rock, I can say that they are natural masses of matter that makes up the outer crust or the upper crust of the earth. They can be differentiated on the three categories: the size of rocks, the color of the rocks and the texture of the rocks. Again, based on these categories, we can define three primary types of rocks. Rocks can be classified into three types. First is igneous rocks, then next is sedimentary rocks, sediments or sedimentary rocks, and third is metamorphic rocks. We will understand one by one in details. Now the first rock is igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks. Again we will discuss with point wise. The first is igneous rocks. Look at the picture here. I given the example of igneous rocks. Here present are granite, scoria, pumice, obsidian. These are the example of igneous rocks. Igneous means Latin word ignis meaning fire. When the molten magma cools, it becomes solid. Rocks thus formed are called igneous rocks. They are also called primary rocks. This igneous rock is the result of volcanic activity. So you have volcano that flows out, and once this magma which is flowing out solidified here, it would be known as igneous rocks. These igneous rocks are also known as primary rocks. And again, most important factor here is to understand this igneous rocks could be of two types. The igneous rocks classified into two types. The first is intrusive rocks and the next is extrusive rock. The first is, again we discuss here, intrusive igneous rocks. Look at the picture here. This is the picture of intrusive igneous rock. Sometimes the molten magma cools down deep inside the earth crust. Solid rocks so formed are called intrusive igneous rocks. Since they cool down slowly, they form large grains. Granite is an example of such a rock. Grinding stones used to prepare paste powder of spices, and grains are made up of granite. As the name suggests, intrusive means they cool inside the earth's surface. So they are not visible on the earth crust. So they cool very slowly. They form larger particle size, and common example is a granite which is found inside the earth crust. Now the next important type of igneous rocks is extrusive igneous rocks. Look at the picture here. This is the picture of extrusive igneous rocks. Lava is actually fiery red molten magma coming out from the interior of the earth on its surface. When this molten lava comes on the earth's surface, it rapidly cools down and becomes solid. Rocks formed in such a way on the crust are called extrusive igneous rocks. They have a very fine grained structure. For example, basalt. The Deccan Plateau is made up of basalt rock. There are certain rocks which come on the surface and deposit on the surface, but they come out to be a very fast and they are known as a fine grain. They are kind of fine grained rock. They could be seen. Their common example is a basalt. You can see basalt in Deccan Plateau. So that is known as a igneous rocks. So we have understood what is the igneous rocks, how they are formed. The common example, that is a granite and basalt, and basic classification for igneous rocks, that it's of two types: intrusive, which is inside the earth, and extrusive, when it comes over the surface of the earth. Now the process of extrusive and intrusive igneous rocks. Look at the picture here. The magma chamber is here. Magma and lava come from that volcanoes. Look at the extrusive igneous rocks cool quickly, and as a result these rocks are fine grained or has a lack of crystal growth. And the intrusive igneous rocks are formed from magma that cools slowly, and as a result these rocks are coarse grained, and this coarse grained mostly used for grinding. The next rock is a pretty interesting, which is known as sediments and sedimentary rocks. Look at the picture here. Here given the sediments and sedimentary rocks. Rocks roll down, crack and hit each other and are broken down into small fragments. These smaller particles are called sediments. These sediments are transported and deposited by wind, water, etc. These loose sediments are compressed and hardened to form layers of rocks. These types of rocks are called sedimentary rocks. For example, sandstone is made from grains of sand, and these rocks may also contain fossils of plants, animals and other microorganisms that once lived on them. Now what happens is, when you have particles that flows on which river, you have small particles that deposit towards the side of the river, or when you say there is a wave action or wind action, you have small deposition that occurs along the periphery of the agent with which they are moving as a result. They are kind of deposited. For example, sandstone. Sandstone is a common sedimentary rocks, and this sandstone is made from sand commonly seen in desert areas. Now Red Fort in India is a common example. When we say it is made up of red sandstone, now since it is flowing with the agent, which can be water, rain or waves, any of the agents, it would include debris, and it would also include kind of animals and plants. Fossil that could be seen. So fossil and debris is another important constituents of the sedimentary rocks that are seen. The next important rock is metamorphic rock. Look at the picture here. This is the picture of metamorphic rock. Now when the both igneous rocks and the sedimentary rocks under high heat and temperature, they are compressed for longer duration, what happen is formation would result into metamorphic rock. So metamorphic rock, I can say, is resultant from the either igneous rock or sedimentary rocks. When they are laid under high temperature and pressure, a common example is clay is converted into slate. Now this slate is an example of metamorphic rock. Limestone getting converted into marble, and it is an example of metamorphic rocks. This again a common structure which is visible with marble. That white marble is Taj Mahal, So Taj Mahal Taj Mahal is made up of white marble from Makrana in Rajasthan. Now all these three rocks we have discussed. Igneous and sedimentary rocks can change into metamorphic rocks under great heat and pressure. For example, clay change into slate and limestone into marble. Now the next point is uses of rocks. The hard rocks are used for making roads, houses and buildings. You use stones in many games. For example, 7 stones means pittu, hopscotch, then 5 stone, gitti. Like that we mostly use for games. Rocks are used in making monuments, example Red Fort, Taj Mahal, etc. So here more uses of rocks. Look at the picture here. The red sandstone used here, Red Fort, and white used for marbles used for Taj Mahal. Rock cycle. We have discussed that cycle in that lecture. Rock cycle. Look at the picture here, the rock cycle. First of all, we learn the definition of rock cycle. What is meant by rock cycle? This process of the transformation of the rock from one to another is known as the rock cycle. Now let's understand. This is the brief. So you have volcano that erupt off here and you have solidification of magma. This solidification leads to formation of igneous rocks. Now when this igneous rock is formed, over time there is a breaking of all forms, the agents of withering and nitrogen. You have breakup of the rocks that occurs and you have formation of sediments. Now these sediments keep on depositing forms the sedimentary rocks. Now either this sedimentary rock or igneous rock under high temperature and pressure would lead to formation of metamorphic rock. Now what would happen? How was the metamorphic rock formed? When the metamorphic rock is formed, it would compress and be compressed to point that it becomes to translate into kind of melted state, and that melted state would again form the core of the magma for eruption of volcano, and this cycle keeps on continuing, and therefore I can say rock cycle merely a transformation from one rock structure to another structure. Here are important points of process of rock cycle. When the molten magma cools, it solidifies to become igneous rocks. These igneous rocks are broken down into small particles that are transported and deposited to form sedimentary rocks. When the igneous and sedimentary rocks are subjected to heat and pressure, they change into metamorphic rocks. Minerals. In simple terms, I can say rocks contain minerals, and these are naturally occurring substances that are presented in rocks. There are two major properties that you must know for minerals. They have certain physical property that the first important thing, and they have a kind of definite chemical composition that can be seen. Now there are various minerals which can be used for various purposes. For example, if I say minerals which are used fuels, a common example is coal, petroleum, natural gas. When I say mineral which are used in industries, it is iron, aluminium, so on and so forth. When I say minerals which are used for medicines or fertilizer, can be phosphorus. Magnesium, and then you have calcium, which is used mainly in the medicine. So these are the some common minerals that are used, and we have talked about the minerals and their applications and the two important properties of the minerals. First of all, they have certain physical characteristics of physical properties and definite chemical composition that can be seen for the minerals. So over here our second chapter. So what we have learned in that chapter is interior of the earth, then crust, mantle, core. Core classified into two types, inner core and outer core. Then after we learn about the rocks. Rocks majorly they define into three categories: sedimentary rocks, igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks. Igneous rocks are two types: intrusive rocks and extrusive rocks. Then sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks, then the cycle of rocks, and the last one, minerals. Thank you.